Welcome to the Roberts Law Office Injury Podcast. Kentucky attorney Jeff Roberts has over 25 years of experience. He'll provide answers to your questions related to personal injury and automobile accidents, workers' compensation claims, and Social Security disability benefits. Let's join Jeff for this episode. And friends, welcome back. We're once again down in Calloway County in Murray, Kentucky, and we're with attorney Jeff Roberts. Jeff, how you doing?
Doing good, Jim. How are you?
Buddy, I'm doing fine. You do a lot of workers' comp claims across the state, and I thought today an interesting topic would be talking about forklift injuries and forklift fatalities. I mean, you deal with a lot of manufacturing facilities. You handle a number of claims in the GM plant up in Bowling Green. We've got some manufacturing, some light industrial here in Calloway County, as well as also over where you have your other office in Hopkinsville. There's a lot of that, but there's a lot of forklifts zipping around. And
Right.
Obviously, when there's a whole bunch of people in a closed area and you've got moving machinery, things are going to happen.
True. And during my career, I've represented several people who've been injured because of forklift incidents. Sometimes the forklift driver, sometimes someone else that's injured because of the forklift driver's actions from that standpoint. And these tend to be serious injuries. If you get struck by a forklift that's moving down, moving product down the alleyway or whatever, the lane, then that can be very serious. And I've unfortunately had some clients where the forklift driver just didn't see them and hit the person, and product fall. The product also fall because the forklift driver stops real quickly at that point in time, and then the product fall off on top of the person. So you have not only the initial blow, but you have a secondary blow as well when the product lands on top of the person. And so those type of injuries can be very, very serious injuries for individuals.
Well, it's kind of interesting. When we were young, our parents always taught us, look both ways before you cross the street, and that made a lot of sense. But in a plant, sometimes when you're walking in between the aisles, maybe you're looking down at a clipboard or a report, or maybe you're carrying something. You're just not looking when you're walking into a main area that, again, the forklift driver may not even see you, and that again, is a great reason, or a very common reason, I would think, why these kind of these pedestrian, if you want to call them pedestrian accidents, happen with a forklift. It's just people are busy and we're preoccupied half the time, but it's still, at the end result, can be tragic.
Yes, and unfortunately, some plants, the way they have, all the forklift drivers need to be properly trained from that standpoint, but some plants, unfortunately, have the forklifts carrying too many things, too much, and blocking the driver's view. From there, I know I've represented some folks where because of that, they nearly always had the forklift operator going in reverse and turning and looking behind them and driving in reverse because they had it stacked so high they couldn't go forward and see anything around them, which is I've always thought both of those are extremely dangerous activities because when you drive in reverse, you're steering is the opposite of what you would what it is normally. From that, plus your ability to see things are nowhere near as good when you're turned looking behind you, because depending on which way you're turning, one direction is not going to be as good of your field of vision is not going to be as good in one direction as it is the other direction from that perspective. And some places have correctly, in my opinion, have those little concave mirrors up around it so they can see a little bit around the corner and see if somebody is coming, a forklift, or another forklift is coming, or a pedestrian is coming up that way. Some places don't have that, so you've got a pedestrian that's coming out or another forklift coming and the other one's crossing over. So there's a variety of different ways that when you have moving machinery such as a forklift that inside a plant can go fairly fast for being inside of a facility like that, it can cause some serious injuries and serious damage.
Well, and that's not only just a manufacturing plant. You go to some of these big box stores like a Walmart or even a Lowe's or a Home Depot. I know Lowe's typically tries to put another person in front, maybe with a handheld flag to let anybody that's in the area know, hey, I've got a forklift coming right behind me. And they do a pretty good job, but that's not always the case. I have seen those concave mirrors, by the way, but half the time you can't really tell what's in. I mean, it just doesn't. It looks odd. It's
Yeah.
not as detailed as just.
It's not as detailed, clearly, from that standpoint. But yeah, like you're saying, and some of the places, especially the Lowe's, Home Depots, where you have customers there, they tend to, at least if they're out on the floor itself, though, I've seen at least the ones I've been in. If they got a forklift operator, they've got that area blocked off,
Yeah.
and they should have the next one blocked off as well. They
Because
started
you
doing
could push
that.
material over.
And that's the reason they
Yeah.
do that, is because that had happened fairly regularly. In fact, I've had a claim against one of those. I won't identify which one for that very reason.
Yep.
The customer they didn't have it blocked off before they were doing that, and they were putting something on the top shelf on one side with a forklift. Nobody was over on the other looking around. My client was over there. Next thing you know, they knocked something off in a big heavy product fell off on top of my client and caused serious injuries to them. So they have at least learned over the years, and they're blocking off both sides of that to prevent the fallen merchandise type situation from occurring. You don't see that as much in warehouse facilities where people are working. It's usually where you see, at least I don't have my clients telling me that, where there's warehouse where they're loading product and all onto semis, and they're doing picking of the stuff to go on, and they don't have that. And I still see clients get injured because forklift knocked something off on the other side.
Yeah.
The forklift driver didn't they were moving product or setting it up there and didn't realize they were hitting the product that was on the other side and getting ready to knock it off.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I've actually been forklift certified, and I can remember back in a warehouse I used to work in, when you're putting something up on the top shelf of a 5-6 layer rack, you can't see all that well. You're down there at ground level, and you're kind of looking around. You're making sure it's up there, but you just don't see it as well. And there's not really a mirror or something up there to tell you. It's better to have a team of people kind of looking, and like you said, just block off that other aisle, because
Yes.
it's just not worth the problem.
Correct. It's not worth the hazard that you're creating in that situation. And that unfortunately occurs, and then just not people not paying attention is a big part of the issue. Is the forklift that I've seen anyway, is the forklift operator just not paying the attention like they should to what's around them, and then they end up hitting something that that never should have hit because they either stacked too high and couldn't see, or just weren't properly keeping a lookout.
Well, in prepping for this episode, we looked through a number of different reports, and a lot of the data is somewhat dated. But one of the reports mentioned that roughly 100 people a year die from some type of injury involving a forklift. And so it's not like this is uncommon. This is every year, 100 lives.
Yes, yeah. And unfortunately I've been involved in a couple where there's been a fatality because of a forklift, and some that were seriously injured because of a forklift incident. And so these can, the forklifts are very dangerous, and you have to be careful.
Yeah. Now, the same report kind of lists the types of accidents that tend to be the most predominant. You've got a forklift overturning, and that could have been maybe you've got a heavy load on the front or something like that, and you've got too much weight for the height that you're lifting at and things like that. So the forklift could overturn, or it could get, maybe you're going around a curve or something like that. I can't see that happening, but it's not improbable.
It's not improbable if you're going too fast with the
Yeah.
product you're doing. And what I've seen from that standpoint as well is when they're forklift overturning is when they're moving the product from in a warehouse into the vehicle, and they're having to go across like a
Some kind of threshold or something.
threshold or a lift type thing, the gate that's there that they drive across and then go into the truck, and then the lift mess up.
Yeah.
Or they, without their knowing, for some reason, the from where they leave the warehouse to go into the truck, there's too much of a gap there that
Yeah.
something moved or what the truck didn't back up as far as it needed to be, and then they hit that, and that caused them to tip over. I've seen that a few different times, to be honest, where that's happened. So
And that seems like such a simple thing
Correct.
to avoid, but it just people
Yeah.
are moving, people are inattentive, people are under a lot of stress to kind of get things done, and
Yeah.
the delivery guys trying to get in and trying to get out, the workers trying to get the stuff off the truck
Yeah.
and get I mean it happens. Yeah, another significant type of injury is where you actually have the foot struck or crushed by the forklift, and I could see that with people in and around the area where a forklift might be operating.
True. Unfortunately, I've seen that as well, and that can be devastating as well. Where the situation where you're talking about, where the forklift is moving a product and somebody's watching and guiding, and the forklift operator, and both of them aren't paying real close attention in the forklift. Either the forks or the product itself pinches or hits the person in the leg, in the foot area, from that standpoint, I've had some unfortunately be crushed between the product and the forklift as well, and with some of these, you've got those type of situations there, and then the product not stacked properly and falling off.
Yeah, that's that fourth area there is when items just falling from the forklift, and especially when you're riding with those forks up in the air a little bit, and maybe it's a sudden stop, maybe it's taking a turn too much, maybe you hit something, you may have a lower, maybe the door's not open all the way, and you're trying to go through a doorway.
Or it was probably most everybody seen, people moving lumber or something like that, and it not be strapped.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And then it starts falling off, and once it starts going, usually a lot of it comes off at one time.
Yeah.
Usually not just one piece. Once that first piece goes, usually you got a lot of others coming with it. So.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Let me switch over to some of the other areas where we see a lot of these injuries and fatalities. There's a different report out that talks about, really, when you're looking at forklift related fatalities, the majority of these tend to happen in the transportation and material moving. Well, you would think material moving, yeah, but transportation, I guess in trucking, where you've got a lot of forklift activity, either coming from a warehouse or a distribution center and trying to get things loaded up. At least that's how I'm starting to read this. Report.
The trade, transportation, and utilities. Is
Yeah.
that the one you're looking at? Yeah, and I think that's yeah. And I think what you're seeing there, especially on the transportation, is like loading stuff up on flatbed trailers, and all that's going to fall in the transportation industry aspect of it, because you're loading it onto the truck, but and using a forklift, or like what I was talking about, the forklift turnover,
Yeah.
when they're trying to go into the truck and all of that. Now it depends on which one you're going to fall at. Is that going to under the warehousing, the trade aspect of it, or is it falls on the transportation side of it? Depends on which one you want to classify it. Yeah, I think it could be classified either way. If you're in a warehouse loading a truck, or if you're at a lumberyard loading a flatbed trailer, I think you could classify that either way. It's going to be who's filling out the report to some extent,
Well,
or who's operating. I mean, some of these
right.
trucks, the truck driver may be, they have the forklifts that stay at the back end of it, and then they of the truck when they deliver goods that they use to unload, and that if they're unloading it at the job site, then it's going to probably fall as the truck driver and transportation industry.
Yeah, that makes sense. Construction's another big area. I mean, I've got a very large job site going on behind my office right now, and they've got all sorts of equipment out there. But yeah, they've got forklifts moving around these. There's just a lot of machinery out there moving, and if you're driving your vehicle, and hopefully you're aware when you're on a construction site. But some of these guys, they're busy, or they're coming around a corner, they're carrying a big object, and maybe they just don't see. And you've got to be careful in these environments.
You do, and that brings up, we're started off talking about the workers' comp side of this, and that's certainly where you see a lot of these injuries. But like on these construction sites, you can develop into more than just a workers' compensation claim there, because if you're injured by a forklift operator who's working for another subcontractor, for instance, then you not only have the workers' compensation claim because you were on the job at the time, but you may have a claim against the employer for that forklift operator for a personal injury claim, a civil case that instead of a workers' compensation case that you can pursue in that setting and as well. And so, and you see that in these forklift cases a lot of times, like especially in the construction side of that, you see where the injuries also, you have two different claims that develop out of that, not just the workers' compensation, but the person who was negligent worked for a different employer, and you may have a claim against that different employer.
And you'd call that a third-party claim, right?
Third party claim is what is referred to among the legal industry. Yes.
Well, as we did some of this research, we did talk about the operator himself or herself, and obviously that might be a workers' comp related, and you might have something with the employer there. But in terms of the third-party situations, it may be a manufacturing defect. Maybe the manufacturer didn't do something properly, or maybe something had happened to the machine that wasn't maintained properly. I think some of that would come back on the employer unless there's some type of service contract.
Certainly, if you've got a forklift that is not properly maintained, and that's what causes the injury, for instance, if they don't have the brakes properly working on it, especially if you're like on these construction sites at times, that you're not always on level ground. If you're in a warehouse, you're on concrete, level concrete. But if you're out on the job site, that forklift may be going down a grade, and if it doesn't have proper brakes, they can't stop, then that could be a problem. From that, I've seen situations where unfortunately they didn't have the brakes set on it, and they weren't working properly, and it rolled down a fairly steep grade and ended up hitting someone and causing, actually caused a fatality in that situation. So you've got those type of things that can occur, and then if the person who was supposed to maintain, if the one who did fail to maintain was the employer of the person injured, it's still just a workers' compensation claim. But if the person who was to maintain that forklift was a different company, then you could have the third-party claim that we just mentioned.
Yeah, so if I outsource the maintenance and the ongoing repairs to the forklift,
or if it was owned by a different, if it's a different company on the job site. So,
and let me ask you this: in previous episodes, when we've dealt specifically with car wrecks, we've talked about if you're a delivery driver and you're driving as part of your normal job and you get into an accident, you probably have workers' comp, obviously. But if it was somebody else's negligence, there could be third-party. There could be a third-party claim, and that opens up the option of pain and suffering, which you don't get under a workers' comp. In this kind of situation, coming back to the forklifts, where we said maybe there was a sub involved or a distributor who was supposed to be doing maintenance on it, does that open up a pain and suffering claim as well?
Yes. That's what one of the big benefits of pursuing the third-party claim is it opens up the pain and suffering damages that you can recover. That's one of the items of damage that workers' comp does not pay. And if you got the workers' comp claim and the third-party claim, workers' comp, if you recover in the third-party claim, workers' comp's going to get reimbursed what they paid out, or at least a good chunk. But the pain and suffering, workers' comp doesn't pay out anything there, so they don't get any of that money, any at all of that.
Well, and I guess with the third-party claim, you've got to prove negligence. So any award that you might receive from that claim is done once the case has been resolved or the settlement's been done. Whereas workers' comp, those benefits are going to start pretty quickly, right? They're going to enable you to get medical treatment up front. They're going to enable you to get paid for time off and things like that, right?
Correct. Yes. The workers' comp usually pays medical as it's being incurred, pays the lost wages as it's being incurred from that. And then the third-party claim is to be successful in a third-party claim, you have to establish that the third party was negligent in some form or fashion. If they were not negligent, then there is no third party claim.
Okay, okay, that makes sense. But and those can run concurrently, right? You can file these at the same time.
Correct.
It's just they're going to resolve maybe a little differently in terms of the injured person receiving some type of financial award. It's going to be paid at a different time.
Correct. Yeah, and you don't know which one's going to resolve.
Yeah,
It depends
yeah.
on each factual situation. Sometimes the third party claim resolves first. Sometimes the workers' compensation claim resolves first.
Interesting.
It varies from that standpoint. And you know, in the construction field, you're probably not going to resolve the third party before the workers' compensation in a car wreck setting where you're limited by liability limits and things of that nature. A lot of times you can resolve the car wreck before the third party car wreck case before the workers' comp claim.
Jeff, let me come back to a previous episode that we did. We specifically did an episode on workplace fatalities. And in Kentucky, in workers' comp, there is something called a death benefit and or survivorship benefit. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure. If in a workplace fatality, then the estate for the deceased person, the estate is paid a lump sum death benefit under Kentucky's workers' compensation law, and that varies. How much that is varies every year. There's a cost of living adjustment every year on that, and that is for to pay funeral bills and final expenses, etc. All kind of comes out, and then anything left over is distributed to either the heirs at law or the beneficiaries under the will if the person has a will there. But that money goes to the estate itself, and then if there is a surviving spouse. Surviving minor children or children that are incapable, adult children, if they're incapable of support or still in school in an accredited educational institution, then they can receive benefits as well. But they receive survivors' benefits based off of the workers' average weekly wage there. And others can potentially receive if they are actually dependent. Someone who's actually dependent upon the injured worker for support could also receive benefits based off the injured worker's average weekly wage.
That makes sense. And so these are complicated situations. None of it really is expected. You don't get up and go to work saying, hey, I'm going to get injured today, or worse off, I'm going to be fatally injured. But when that happens, you need to have an attorney whom you can trust. And Jeff, you've been practicing workers' comp across the state of Kentucky for 32 years now?
Since, 30, a little over 32 years. Started practicing in October of 92, so I'm working on my 33rd year of practicing law.
Outstanding. Congratulations. And you regularly handle cases. You've got two offices. So your primary office is here in Murray, Kentucky, down in Calloway County.
Correct.
You've got a new satellite office over in Hopkinsville in Christian County. But you handle cases all across the state. I mean, you're up in Louisville, fairly often. You're doing stuff in northern Kentucky fairly often. You have a lot of colleagues who actually call you to take the comp claim if they're dealing with an injury claim. And not every attorney is called by their colleagues to step in and help them with a case.
I do work with several attorneys that they're handling the third party claim, but there's a workers' comp component to it, and they reach out to me to handle the the workers' comp side of that. I do third party claims myself at times. Well, frequently if I get the cases from there, but yes, I do handle cases all over the state. From that, I've got active cases now in Bowling Green and Lexington, Louisville, over in eastern Kentucky. As well from that standpoint. So I handle cases in all over the Commonwealth of Kentucky, workers' compensation cases all over the Commonwealth. And a lot of that now we are doing with workers' comp, especially we're doing a lot of the hearings even are being held by video conference instead of being in person. Like, jury trials, at least in Kentucky, I've never known of a jury trial not to be in person. I know during COVID, some states were doing some Zoom type or video conference jury trials. I know it's occurred. I can't imagine how that takes place, but I know some attorneys who've done them. It'd be very odd to me from that standpoint. But from a workers' comp standpoint, frequently we have the depositions, the final hearings, and all are held by video conference. So the client, the client can be in Eastern Kentucky, I be in Murray, and everything work out. They never have to travel me, and I never have to travel to them. If I am over there, I will set up conferences with them from that standpoint. So but it has worked out to allow me to be able to represent even. I've always represented in a fairly wide area, but it's spread out even wider as a result of our use of the video conferencing.
And you've actually got one phone number primarily that people, regardless of where they are. I mean, you've got an 800 number, but you've got one office number that people can call, whether they're trying to get you in Hopkinsville or Murray or wherever. You've really kind of set that system up easily.
Yes, I've got it set up to where they don't have to try to go, is he in Hopkinsville today? Is he in Murray today? And call around to try to find where I'm at. They call the phone numbers 270-753-0053, or if you want to use the 800 number, it's 1-800-844-5108. You call that number, it rings to the office here in Murray. But if I am outside of the office in Hopkinsville or somewhere else, they can get in touch with me. We can make contact and all of that. If I'm able to talk, great. If I'm not, we'll get a time set up to talk with clients. But having that one office number, I think, helps clients because they only have to have one number programmed into the phone. Or I don't know of anybody that memorizes numbers anymore, but if you are somebody who does that, you just got to remember one number. So.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And friends, if you've been listening to this, we referenced the workplace fatality episode. That's episode 36, and I'm going to go ahead and put that in the show notes so that you'll be able to have just a quick link there. But if you want to find more information about workers' compensation, injuries, and accidents, feel free to check out jeffrobertslaw.com. We've got an entire podcast page. We have over 100 episodes out there now dealing with not only workers' compensation, but also personal injury and Social Security disability and a few other topics out there. But I think you'll find that information helpful. And Jeff, that's the one thing I really admire about you, taking the time to really kind of break down these legal issues to help it be just a little bit more understandable. You're not giving legal advice, but you're helping people understand, okay, I need to know that, or I need to ask these questions, or hey, maybe that is a question I need to have a conversation with Jeff. But you give free consultations.
Yes, the initial consultation is free. So if you have questions, you can call up. We'll try to set you up an appointment, and then and we can have the conversation. If it's personal injury claim, we'll talk about that. If it's a workers' comp, we'll talk about the workers' compensation claim. If it's both, we'll talk about both. And I will try to give you information, kind of educate you a little bit on the law. From there, obviously, if you've got one of these type of claims, you're better off having an attorney involved, but you also need to know kind of what's taking place and what you're entitled to and what you're not entitled to, and we'll have that conversation, and then you can make a decision at that point on whether it's whether you want to hire me or don't want to hire me. That's your call, but that initial consultation is free.
But, again, if you've been injured in some type of forklift-related accident, Jeff, you mentioned several times throughout this episode that, whether it's a construction situation, whether it's a big box store, maybe whether it's a warehouse situation or some kind of manufacturing plant, you've represented a number of these clients. So, I mean, you've been involved with these cases before. It's not like, hey, let me pull out the law books and learn how to handle this. You've got the experience in and among the other 32 years that you've been practicing.
Yes, and it's actually, I'm somewhat surprised thinking back over it how many cases I've had that's been related to forklifts in that regard, and not wasn't that long ago. I think I had 3 or 4 cases going on that were forklift related type injuries. Either 2 of them, one was struck a person, an individual pedestrian struck by a forklift. The other that just pops in my head right off is he would happen to be in a huge man lift, working high, and the forklift struck his man lift and knocked it over. And so you've got, at one time I know I had 3, fairly recently had 3 or 4 that were going on all at one time, different injuries.
Right.
From that, which is somewhat surprising to me, but that's how frequently these injuries occur.
Well, and as we said from the outset, there appears to be roughly 100 fatalities involving forklift accidents each year, and that's just,
Yeah.
I mean, it's tragic when that happens. I mean, there's training, there's certifications that are set up, there's OSHA, that kind of comes in from a safety standpoint, a lot of these plants and all, but yet this still happens, and
Yes.
that's nobody plans for it, but when it does, once again, nice to know that you've got an attorney who actually understands these specific types of cases.
Yes, yeah, having an attorney who has experience with the type of case that you have can be very, very beneficial. Yes.
Outstanding. Well, Jeff, you've got a motto here at the Roberts Law Office that I always like to try to plug in here at the end of the episode because I think it says something. When you're handling cases against large manufacturers and their insurance companies, when you're handling cases all across the Commonwealth of Kentucky, you get the big city lawyers coming in, you get all this other stuff coming in, but here you are as a solo attorney in Western Kentucky really taking them on. And the way you do that, I think, speaks well of you. Tell us about that motto.
The motto is that we provide small town service and deliver big city results. And we try to live up to that motto in every case that we handle. And essentially what that is, when you hire us to represent you, hire my law firm to represent you in the case. First off, I'm the only attorney in the firm, so you're hiring me to represent you. I'm going to be the one in court with you at your hearing there. But it also is the way that is you're not a number for us. We try to provide that personal service, like I say, small town service. From that standpoint, but we also try to, I've been doing this 32 years. Think I do a good job at doing what I do from that standpoint. I've built up a good reputation, and I'm proud of the reputation I've built up. And we try to deliver the best results we can for our client. And I use big city results because some people think, well, if I go to get a big city attorney, I'm going to get better results. From that, even though they're giving up some of the service or maybe giving up some of the service from that standpoint. But, having an attorney that will try to explain things in a firm that's going to give you the personal service from that standpoint, but still deliver those quality results, I think is beneficial to our clients. So.
Jeff, outstanding. Once again, as I always say at the end of this, thanks for your time. I know you're busy. You got a lot on your shoulders here. You got a lot of cases that you're handling, but you always take the time, to come back and just kind of break down these topics for us. So, friends, we'll be back in about 2 weeks with a new episode. But I hope you'll find this interesting. I hope you'll share this out with people because, again, the frequency of forklift accidents, whether it's on a construction site, in a retail situation, or in a manufacturing, distribution situation, it happens more frequently than people might understand. And when you share it out on social media, somebody might be looking for that information, even though you didn't know they were injured at the time. So that's always helpful to us. Yeah. Jeff, buddy, I appreciate it. We'll see you back here in about 2 weeks.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Roberts Law Office Injury Podcast. Jeff will return in 2 weeks. Until then, he invites you to visit jeffrobertslaw.com and follow his firm on Facebook. At the Roberts Law Office, you'll find a history of small town service and big city results.